You're listening to The Voluntary Life, where you can hear ideas for finding freedom in an unfree world. Visit thevoluntarylife.com to connect with the show and hear all past episodes. Here's your host, Jake.
Hi, it's Jake here. Welcome to The Voluntary Life. In this week's episode, I want to tell you about one of the most powerful tools for productivity and personal development that I know. It's an integral tool to the getting things done approach to productivity, but it's also an approach that's used in many other personal development ideas and systems. And this technique really helps you to sort your life out. It's a technique for identifying all the areas of responsibility in your life. And it allows you to sort your life out into all those different aspects of life that are meaningful to you. What this does is to help you answer the question, what the hell am I doing with my life and why? And when you want to know what you should be working on, what you should be devoting your time to, this technique is what helps you to find your answer to those questions. So if you struggle with knowing whether or not things that you're doing are a good use of your time, if you struggle with getting balance between your work life and your personal life, or different aspects of your personal life even, then this technique of sorting your life into areas of responsibility is really going to help with that. It's not a very complicated idea, but nonetheless, very few people actually do this because it's hard to implement. In this episode, I'm going to talk about how you actually implement this. I've done previous episodes talking about areas of responsibility, in particular episode 232, which was called The Next Level Horizons of Focus Part 1, and episode 185, which was called How to Set Meaningful Goals for the Year Ahead. And you might find it useful to listen to those previous episodes as well. But in those episodes, I talk generally about this idea of sorting your life into areas of responsibility. And now I want to tell you how to implement this and explain how I implement it. So we're going to get into the details of really making this happen for you. Before we get into the details, I've got some exciting news that I'd like to share with you. As you know, this podcast is about empowering you to create a life of your own choosing through inspiring ideas for entrepreneurship, financial independence, and freedom. I want to completely upgrade the show and provide a whole new range of bonus content and enable new ways for my supporting listeners to connect with me and with each other. And to do this, I've set up a way for you to help support the show as a patron of the show and get a treasure trove of bonus content in return. So I've started an account with Patreon. Patreon is like an ongoing version of Kickstarter. You get to become a patron of a content creator that you want to support, and in return, you get a whole load of bonus content. So what I've done is to set up different levels of rewards for different levels of financial support for the show. And these range from things like additional bonus episodes, to live streams with listeners, to the chance to connect with me one-to-one, and many more bonuses too. So if you're interested in helping me to grow and develop the show and getting a whole load of bonus content, here's how you do it. Go to patreon.com/The Voluntary Life. Or you can just go to Patreon and search for The Voluntary Life. I'll also put a link in the show notes. Patreon is patreon.com. When you go there, you create an account and provide them with a payment method like a credit card on your account. And then you choose any level of financial support that you want to help support the show each month. It's entirely up to you how much you choose to support. And what you'll see is that I've set out different levels of bonuses depending on the level of support that you want to give. So take a look at the different bonus rewards that I'm offering on the Patreon page and choose the amount that you would like to support me. Then each month, you'll pay an amount of your choosing to support the show, which all happens automatically. You don't have to do anything else. It's all taken care of by Patreon. Then you'll get ongoing bonuses like the special bonus episodes that I'm going to be doing for supporters and many other bonuses. You can change the level of support that you like at any time, and you can stop at any time too. It's really simple and easy. So please do help me by supporting the show and becoming a supporting listener on Patreon. Go to patreon.com and search for The Voluntary Life or thevoluntarylife.com website and click on the link to support the show. And I'll put a link in the show notes as well. Okay, so now on to talking about sorting your life out. Productivity systems are all about sorting your life out. And the idea of this concept of areas of responsibility is that everything you do should be sorted into one area of responsibility. By sorting your life into these areas of responsibility, you get an overview of what you're doing, and you can therefore decide what you want from each area of your life. And within each of those areas of responsibility, you can decide what your goals are, what your vision is, and what your someday maybe projects are for each aspect of your life. That therefore gives you the ability to decide what to focus on, what to do next, and what things that you're doing that might not really be in alignment with where you want your life to go. So I'm going to tell you how I do this and tell you how to implement this too. It's really simple, but it's still quite difficult to do, because what we're talking about is simply defining your life in terms of the different responsibilities that are meaningful to you. So the first step is that you've got to identify each of these and write these down. I recommend that you create an ongoing system to do this. I personally use Evernote, and I have a different note for each of my areas of responsibility. And even though nobody else looks at these notes, it's just for me, I really have taken care in writing and maintaining these notes that I have for each of my areas of responsibility, because this is a tool that I use to help me align all of my activities and all of my projects with my goals in life. You know, there's often the case where people can be really good at their work, but neglect their personal life, or they can pay a lot of good attention to their personal life and not be getting ahead in their career or their work life. So this technique is also really helpful for getting the balance that you want between the different aspects of your life and devoting the time that you want to what matters to you. It's not just about work, and it's not just about your personal life. It's about everything that you do. So I'm going to help you to write down each of your areas of responsibility. The difficulty that people have is knowing how to identify these different areas of responsibility. How many should you have? What should they be? What should you call them? A lot of people have asked me for more hands-on help with defining their areas of responsibility in life. And that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. So here's the first question I get asked a lot. How many areas of responsibility should you have? And in the past, I've often said, well, you should have as many as works for you, and everyone is different. So choose the amount that works for you and don't worry about other people. And I still totally hold to that answer, but I know that a lot of people want more guidance than that. Obviously, do whatever works for you, but if you want more guidance, my answer to the question, how many areas of responsibility should I have, is you should have 15 plus or minus 5. So if you have less than 10 areas of responsibility, I think you have too few, and you should think again about whether or not you may have some areas of responsibility that are very, very broad. If you have more than 20, I think you have too many. Another question I get asked a lot is, how many areas of responsibility do I have? At the moment, I have 17 areas of responsibility. I've seen some personal development websites which suggest breaking your life down into 12 different categories, but that's more focused just on the personal side as opposed to work as well. So, as I say, my answer to you is 15 plus or minus 5. That's what you should aim for. But what should these areas of responsibility be? That's what we're going to talk about now. We're going to talk about your work or career responsibilities. We're going to talk about social responsibilities, the practical side of life, things that you need to do to keep things going, personal development responsibilities, lifestyle. And within each of those broad areas, I'm going to tell you the different areas of responsibility that I have, how I sort my life out, and hopefully that'll help you to decide for yourself. So let's talk about work. This is an easy one to start with, because if you've read Getting Things Done, then you know that one of the real focuses of many of these productivity techniques has been to try and identify your areas of responsibility in your work life so that you know what you're doing in work. Chances are, if you're a knowledge worker, you have more than one work responsibility. There's very few jobs these days where you literally just turn a widget all day long on an assembly line. You probably have multiple responsibilities, and you probably have to think about what it is that you're supposed to be doing in order to get on in your work. And in fact, it's a really important question to think about how many areas of responsibility make sense in your job. Are you spread too thinly? Do you have too many different responsibilities? Or are you not aware of some of the responsibilities that you should have, of the things that you haven't really taken responsibility for that you ought to? one of the really important things that helped my business was when my business partner and I decided to sit down and really define and split up the responsibilities that we had as the two founders of our company and identify who was going to do what and give each other the freedom to get on and be responsible for the areas that we were responsible for. Because the worst case is where everybody is doing everything badly and nobody has specific responsibility. And the best case is where you talk to your partners or your boss and you clearly identify what it is that you're responsible for and what you're supposed to be working towards. So, for example, in the case of my background setting up a startup, some of the kinds of areas of responsibility that I had were things like sales. That is an area of responsibility. Human resources, hiring people, taking care of staff, that was an area of responsibility that I had. The IT system, that was another area of responsibility. And my partner had different responsibilities, like facilities management, making sure that we had enough office space and all that kind of stuff, and many other ones too. Even if you're a solopreneur or you work alone or you're just a freelancer, even if it's just for you, it makes sense to divide up your working life into the different areas of responsibility. So now, although I am job-free, I still do this podcast. And for example, on this podcast, I split up my responsibilities between the creative side of podcasting and what I call the platform side. So one of my responsibilities is to make these podcasts, to think about ideas that I want to share with you and people that I want to interview and record them and make the ideas. But another side of the voluntary life as a podcast is the platform itself, working out, for example, as I've just mentioned, how I'm going to get support for the show, how I'm going to reach new listeners, the marketing and technical side of the show. Now, I could split my responsibilities up even further, but I choose those two different aspects for this podcast because that's what works for me. When I was an entrepreneur, I had more than just two. I had probably about 5 different areas of responsibility at work. So the first step that you want to do is think about your work and identify different areas of responsibility that make sense. If you're an entrepreneur, it's quite easy to do this because you just use the names of different departments that you would often find in a company, like sales, HR, IT, and all of this kind of stuff. And you just decide which of these am I responsible for. If you run a small business or you're doing something on your own, then you can probably use less areas of responsibility, similar to the way that I do now. But the key is to divide up your work into the different areas and then identify what are your goals for each of these different areas. What is your vision for them? So for example, when I was running a business, I was thinking about sales and I had goals to think about what level of sales are we trying to reach? How are we going to do it? What needs to happen for that to happen? And when I was thinking about human resources, I was thinking about what people do we want to hire? What do we want this team to look like? And how are we going to build that team? And what do we need to do to create the kind of company culture that we want? When you do that, it enables you to say to yourself, if you're stuck, in the stress of a Monday morning with emails to answer and things to do, and you find yourself with some stupid little problem that is taking up hours of your time, it enables you to step back for a minute and say, what is this that I'm doing now? Is this really part of my responsibility in sales or HR or whatever else it is that I'm trying to achieve? Or is this a distraction? And it enables you to focus yourself and focus every single work project that you do in alignment with the goals that you have for your different area of responsibility. So you can say to yourself, the reason that I'm spending all this time trying to set up this CRM system is because this is what's going to help me reach my sales target. So yes, this is a good use of my time because I need this to work in order to get better at responding to customers and so on and so forth. Alternatively, if you find yourself wasting a lot of time redesigning templates because they might look slightly nicer or something like that, you can say to yourself, wait a minute, is this really going to impact on my responsibility in sales? Is this actually going to help me? Or is this more like something that I'm doing because it's an easy thing to do rather than focus on what I really need to do? So, first step, write down your different areas of responsibility in your work life. What are you responsible for? What should you be responsible for? And what are you doing that's actually got nothing to do with your core responsibilities that you really ought not to be doing? Next, we're going to talk about something that is not to do with your work. We're going to talk about the different areas of your life that are to do with social relationships. We all have social lives, and you can sort your life into different aspects of your social relationships. So I will give you some of the categories that I use, and you can choose for yourself which ones of these apply to you. The first one is your relationship. If you are in a relationship, then this is one important aspect of your life. And a lot of what happens in your life is to do with that relationship. So it's really helpful to identify this as an area of your life, define it as such, and decide for yourself, what do you want from this relationship? What are your goals? What do you need to do to maintain your relationship? What's your vision for the best that this relationship can be? And what do you need to do to really enjoy that relationship? That can help you to identify particular projects that might be a part of that relationship. A very important relationship project for me a few years ago was getting married. That was something that was a specific project, and it belonged to this aspect of my life, this area of responsibility. There are lots of other projects that you might have that are to do with your relationship. For example, if you have a particular difficulty with your partner about some aspect of your communication, something that you keep arguing about, or something that's a problem for you, then you may have a project which is to address this source of conflict between you, to work out how you two are going to find a way to overcome this source of conflict. And that could be a specific project as well. If you see your relationship in these terms, then it enables you to really devote time and care to maintaining and growing your relationship. It's a really important thing to do. It's so easy, especially if you're an entrepreneur, to devote your time to things like sales, IT, this kind of stuff, because your work has urgent tasks that need to be done. But that is not all you are. You also have your personal life too. And speaking as someone who did neglect his personal life for many years, it's been a really important thing for me to learn to invest time and really identify this as an area of my life. The next area of responsibility that I have is my social life. And this is really where I would put what you might call friends and family, anything to do with your social life outside your love relationship, your partner. I find it helpful to have a specific one for my partner, and then I have another one for the rest of my social life. So if you're planning a social gathering or something like that, that would be a project that belongs to your social life area of responsibility. And a third one that I have is parenting. Again, this is a social responsibility, but it's specifically different from my relationship with my wife, and it's also different from my social life generally. This is to do with my responsibility as a parent for my daughter. And this is where I think about things to do with what I need to do to keep her healthy and to give her the right environment and to give her all the best chances in life that I want her to have. So in the future, anything to do with her health or education or fun stuff for her, anything like that would be a project for me that I would put within this parenting area of responsibility. And I also, for both my social life and my parenting, just like for my relationship, I also identify what my goals are and what my vision is. So what are my goals for my social life? What do I want from my social life? What do I need to do to move towards that? And the same for my parenting. What kind of parent do I want to be? What do I need to do to move towards that? And that means that just like in the way I talked about with work, when I'm looking at these areas of my life, if I'm stuck in the middle of doing something, I'm able to say, how does this align with what I really want from my social life? Or how does this align with what I really want from my parenting? Or what I really want from my marriage? And I'm able to identify what I should be devoting my time to and define all my projects in a way that really fit my goals for those areas of my life. So far, we've talked about what the purpose of areas of responsibility within your productivity system and your personal development are as a whole. We talked about your work and how to define the different areas of responsibility that you have. And we started talking about your personal life. In particular, we talked about your social life, and we talked about the areas of responsibility that you can have with other people. And I mentioned 3 that work for me: my relationship, my social life, and parenting. So now you can go and think about your relationships with other people and think about what areas of responsibility make sense for you. That's not all. We've got lots of other areas of responsibility to talk through. And I'm going to tell you what I do for lots of practical ones, like my financial life and various other things like that. So I will talk through those, but I think that's where we're going to end it today. I have already recorded the second episode, part 2 of this. And if you want to hear part 2 of how to sort your life out, all you need to do is help support the show by becoming a patron on Patreon. As I told you about in the beginning of this episode, I've set up this new way for you to become a supporting listener and for me to give you bonus content. And I've already recorded the first bonus content show, and it's part 2 of how to sort your life out. So if you're enjoying this and want to continue in identifying your areas of responsibility, check out the link in the show notes or on my website, thevoluntarylife.com, to Patreon. You can also just search on patreon.com for The Voluntary Life, become a supporter of the show, and get the first bonus episode. That's all for this week. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week. I'll be back next week with another free show, and I'm also creating loads of awesome bonus content for you to check out if you'd like to support the show.
Thank you for listening to The Voluntary Life. If you have feedback about the show, please email jake@thevoluntarylife.com. If you enjoyed this program, please share the podcast with your friends or click the donate button on thevoluntarylife.com.